Before we begin, I want you to imagine something. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. You're completely alone in your house. The doors are locked, the windows are closed, and everyone else is asleep. Then suddenly, you hear footsteps coming from upstairs. Slow, heavy, deliberate. At first, you tell yourself it's nothing. Maybe the house settling. Maybe your imagination. But then, you remember something terrifying. There is no upstairs. This is one of the most disturbing real-life horror cases ever reported. A story involving a forgotten farmhouse, a missing child, and voices that should never have existed. What happened inside that house remains unexplained to this day. And by the end of this video, you might think twice before spending a night alone. This is the story of the Blackwell Farmhouse. In the autumn of 1978, the Carter family believed they had found the perfect home. The property sat miles away from the nearest town. No traffic, no neighbors, no noise. Just endless fields stretching toward the horizon. To David Carter, it seemed like a dream. The farmhouse was old, but it was beautiful. And most importantly, it was cheap. Far cheaper than similar properties in the area. When David asked why the price was so low, the real estate agent simply smiled and said, "People around here have strange superstitions." David laughed. He didn't believe in ghost stories. Unfortunately, that would soon change. The family moved in on a cold October afternoon. Everything seemed normal. The children explored their new rooms. Karen unpacked boxes. David worked outside, preparing the property for winter. Nothing felt unusual. But the first sign appeared only hours after sunset. At exactly 1:34 in the morning, David woke up. At first, he wasn't sure what had disturbed him. Then he heard it again. Footsteps. Slow footsteps moving across the second-floor hallway. One step, then another, then another. The sound was clear. Someone was walking upstairs. David immediately assumed one of the children was awake. He got out of bed and walks into the hallway. The footsteps stopped. Everything became silent. He checked both children's rooms. They were asleep. Every door was locked. Every window was closed. There was nobody else in the house. David returned to bed. But just as he closed his eyes, the footsteps started again. This time directly above his bedroom. Slow, heavy, almost as if someone was pacing back and forth, waiting, watching, listening. The following morning he told Karen about the incident. She laughed and blamed the old wooden floors. But deep down, David knew what he had heard. And over the next few days, the sounds continued. Every night, at nearly the same time. Always the same slow footsteps. Always stopping the moment he investigated. Then things became worse. One evening, Karen was hanging clothes outside near sunset. As she looked toward the house, she noticed movement in an upstairs window. At first, she thought it was one of the children, but the figure wasn't moving. It was simply standing there, watching her. Karen shaded her eyes and looked closer. What she saw made her blood run cold. A woman, pale skin, long dark hair, wearing what appeared to be an old-fashioned white dress. The woman stood perfectly still, staring directly at her.
Karen dropped the basket and rushed inside. She ran upstairs, checked every room, opened every closet, but there was nobody there. The children were downstairs. David was working outside, and yet she knew what she had seen. That night she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the woman's face staring back at her from the window. The next morning, Karen spoke to a neighbor about the incident. The elderly woman became strangely quiet. Then she asked a question. "Was she wearing white?" Karen felt her stomach drop. She nodded. The neighbor's expression changed immediately. And then she told Karen something she would never forget. "You saw the Blackwell woman." Karen had no idea what that meant, but she was about to learn. Because the history of the farmhouse was darker than anyone had imagined. And buried beneath that property was a secret waiting to be discovered. Karen couldn't stop thinking about what the neighbor had said. The Blackwell woman. Who was she? And why did people in town seem afraid to even mention her name? A few days later, David visited the local library. He wanted answers. What he found was disturbing. According to old newspaper records, the farmhouse had once belonged to a family named Blackwell. In 1903, their youngest daughter disappeared without a trace. She was only 7 years old. Authorities searched the surrounding fields, the nearby woods, even neighboring farms, but the little girl was never found. Weeks later, tragedy struck again. The girl's mother was discovered dead inside the farmhouse. The official report ruled it a suicide. But locals believed something else had happened. Many claimed that after her daughter's disappearance, the woman changed. She wandered through the house at night, talking to someone nobody could see. She claimed she could hear her daughter's voice, calling from inside the walls. Most people assumed grief had driven her insane. But after her death, strange reports began spreading throughout the town. People claimed they saw a woman standing in the upstairs window, watching, waiting, searching. For decades, the stories never stopped. David dismissed most of it as local folklore. But strange things continued happening inside the house. The basement became the center of everything. At random times during the day, the basement door would slowly open by itself. Tools disappeared. Boxes were moved. Objects changed places. Then came the whispers. Late one night, David heard voices coming from below. At first, they were too faint to understand. He stood near the basement stairs, listening carefully. Several voices seemed to overlap. Whispering, murmuring, speaking in tones too low to recognize. David grabbed a flashlight and went downstairs. The basement was empty. Nothing moved. Nothing seemed unusual. Yet the moment he turned to leave, the whispering started again. This time directly behind him. David spun around. Nobody was there. But he knew one thing. The voices had not been his imagination. Weeks passed. The atmosphere inside the house grew heavier. Even visitors noticed it. Friends who stopped by often complained about feeling uncomfortable. Some refused to stay after dark. Others claimed they felt as though someone was watching them from another room. Then something happened that frightened the entire family. One morning, the Carter children approached their parents and began talking about a new friend, a little girl named Emily. At first, it seemed harmless. Children often invent imaginary friends. But Emily was different. The children described her in detail. She wore old-fashioned clothing. She appeared mostly at night, and according to them, she lived inside the walls. When David asked where Emily came from, his daughter gave a strange answer. "She's looking for her mommy." The room fell silent. Neither child knew anything about the Blackwell family, yet their description matched the missing girl from the newspaper articles. David felt uneasy. But what happened next terrified him. One afternoon, his daughter handed him a drawing. It showed a little girl standing beside a large hole in the ground. Above her was a woman crying. At the bottom of the page were 5 simple words. "Emily wants to go home." David couldn't explain why, but seeing those words sent a chill through his entire body. That same night, he made a decision. He would record the sounds inside the house. He placed a tape recorder in the upstairs hallway before going to bed. The next morning, he listened to the recording. For hours, there was silence. Then, shortly after 3 a.m., a voice appeared. A woman's voice. Weak, sad, almost desperate. She spoke only one sentence. "Where did you take her?" David replayed the recording over and over. The words never changed. The voice was always there. Yet nobody in the house had spoken during the night. For the first time since moving in, David became genuinely afraid. Months later, while researching old maps of the property, he made a discovery. Behind the farmhouse, hidden beneath decades of overgrown weeds and vegetation, was an old sealed well. The well had been covered long before the Carter family arrived. Nobody knew why. Driven by curiosity, David decided to investigate. Workers were hired to remove the heavy cover. As they opened the well, an unbearable silence fell over the property. Everyone watched. Nobody spoke. When the workers finally looked inside, their expressions changed immediately. At the bottom of the well were old children's belongings. Tiny shoes, fragments of clothing, rusted toys, items that had remained hidden for decades. Authorities examined the objects but could never establish exactly how they got there.
No remains were officially discovered. No answers were found. Yet after the well was opened, the activity inside the farmhouse intensified. Doors slammed shut. Lights flickered. Footsteps echoed through empty rooms. And every night, at exactly 3:07 a.m., the scratching began. Scratch, 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 coming from somewhere inside the walls, as if someone trapped within the house was desperately trying to get out. The Carter family had reached their limit. They decided to leave. The moving trucks were scheduled to arrive the following morning. Only one final night remained. None of them slept. They stayed together in the living room, waiting for sunrise. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Then, the clock struck 3:07 a.m. Immediately, every door in the house opened, one after another, slowly, without a single person touching them. The sound echoed throughout the farmhouse. Then came the crying. A little girl crying somewhere downstairs. The sound was heartbreaking. Karen later said it sounded completely real, like a frightened child begging for help.
David rushed toward the basement. The crying grew louder, then suddenly stopped. Silence filled the house. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then, a woman's voice echoed through the hallway. Loud, clear, impossible to ignore. "I found her." And just like that, everything ended. The footsteps stopped. The whispers vanished. The scratching never returned. The following morning, the Carter family left the farmhouse forever. Years later, the building was demolished. Today, nothing remains except an empty field. But locals still tell stories. Some claim a woman in white appears near sunset. Others report hearing a child crying in the distance during quiet nights. Whether the events were supernatural or simply a series of strange coincidences remains unknown. But one thing is certain: the Carter family never returned, and those who know the story still avoid that land after dark. Because some places don't forget, and some secrets refuse to stay buried. So, would you spend a single night inside the Blackwell farmhouse? Or would you leave the moment you heard those footsteps? Let me know your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more terrifying true horror stories. Until next time, sleep carefully, because sometimes the things we fear most are already inside the house.